Okay. I'm tempted to get my old panel style and put the panel up here, but I'll put it in the thumbnail just because I really don't want to get copyright strike started from a series that I really like and I'm hoping survives and does well. I mean, it's already past the point where it would be axed, I would assume. Obviously, it's just now into like sustained areas of it trying to live. And that is the series Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. I've talked about it a little bit on the channel. If you see me anywhere online, I've been talking about it a lot since it came out. I genuinely really enjoyed the series. I think it's really, really good for its lifespan and a manga that hasn't done anything yet. Like as far as I know, this is his first manga, and but we know though about the backstory of the manga. He was one of Oda's assistants for like 5 years, and then he put this out. And I love the style of the series. I've talked about again that a little bit. I know like if I compared it to any shonens, I feel like that are more obvious. The ones, I mean, you could easily say like One Piece because that's the clearest direct connection. But I would also say just in tones, it gives me strong vibes of like Fairy Tail and Bleach. But I think that has to do more of just being a very core shonen feeling series, as is obviously Fairy Tail, One Piece, and Bleach. They're very core toned of the shonen genre. But at the same time, I feel like, I don't know if it's just me, but it's something about the way that this artist, I'm trying to get his exact name, Shoichi Usui, the way that he does characters, it reminds me of like, when it comes to character personality and the ways that they act, like I said, it reminds me of these other shonens, but when it comes to like design, he reminds me a lot of like a little bit of Soul Eater. I know I've seen people talk about that, but honestly, I see way more of like old style Yu-Gi-Oh, or some Takahashi style of, OG Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it's like the clothes though, like specifically the slick kind of like black outfits for a lot of characters. Like Kiyoshi's got like the heels and stuff on its boots to make him taller. It just is really cool in its aesthetic. But as it were, if you've been reading the series, the most recent chapter, they went to do the whole shonen style trope. They went to the hot springs to go train. It's at this one for all these different exorcists, and after they got the first kind of like round of stuff and information kind of got going, Sakaki has pretty much set Kiyoshi to not spar. It seems like they're having full out match to be reality. I would imagine for Kiyoshi it's a full out match, but I genuinely don't think that Sakaki put in 100%, because he talks about how he's like knocking the rust off him. But I personally feel like he's just kind of saying that. Like, I think he's genuine in that point, but I don't think he's fully genuine in like the amount of effort that he put in, because he looks a little damaged from the fight, but he doesn't look like he was really that kind of pushed. And so pretty much like it starts out, Yoshi's just going for his normal kind of setup. Like Sakaki says, like, listen, come at me like you're going to kill me. I'm not going to hold back. This is important training. We need to make sure that you get your right training. Kiyoshi just, like I said, he goes for his normal stuff. Goes for Artemis, just goes for the shot, and Sakaki just blocks it with a pentagram shield, which I think is cool. I like that it's something that seemingly any exorcist can do, but also it is going to obviously scale with their capabilities and whatnot. And we did see a new weapon from Sakaki in this chapter. He ended up rolling. Once we get all of his general numbers, assuming that's where his powers at the most part are at right now, I wouldn't be surprised if he has another demon besides High Stakes that he has contracted with, or if High Stakes and him have another game. But as far as we know right now, this is the only game that he has. I can't remember exactly what it's called off the top of my head. I've literally gotten a conversation about it, just going to the rules and trying to figure out how his powers work. But essentially, he rolls a dice, and one of those dice, like, I guess the highest one is what he goes off of, or one that stands out. And then if he gets a 1, 2, 3, then he gets like an automatic loss. I assume it would just be like lots of damage and he'd pass out or something. Or maybe like I think it'd be way cooler if High Stakes turned into a weapon that turned on him. Like High Stakes just went on a rampage, and it's like, well, it's kind of beneficial for me, but it's still awful. But we have now 3. We don't have 1, 2, 3, or 4, but we have 5, which is his Guardian Umbrella. We have the Hexecution Cleaver, which is this one. And then we have his 4, 5, 6 Instant Wind Death Slayer Blade. And so far, at least from what we've shown, they've all had distinct abilities. We don't really know what Death Slayer Blade does, at least from what I can tell. It looks like it's one of those sorts that, like, maybe it cuts stuff, everything within vision, just because there's that bit when he slashed Yuta that he cut that cloud way off in the distance. But with his Guardian Umbrella, it seems like he can control it at will, like he can just straight manipulate it. and then he can use it for defensive attacks and stuff, and obviously it has those beams and whatnot that it can shoot. But his Hexecution Cleaver, at least again that I'm going off of what's shown in the chapter, it seems to just give him like this extreme strength. Like he goes for like a big attack on Kiyoshi, just this big overhead swing, and it's like smashing and cracking up the ground all below him, just completely tearing apart the terrain. And Kiyoshi's just doing what he can to block. And on top of that, he's doing stuff like he uses Athena blocks attack, but then he goes for like a Hecatoncheires, and he like, you know, lands the hit at Sakaki, but Sakaki blocks it with the sword, and it knocks him back. But it's like, you have to keep in mind this attack specifically, like Hecatoncheires, it was used to defeat Senpai Yanma, which we know, obviously, Sakaki's way above. But it's like, he used it against Azudaroth. When we saw it initially connected, it did damage. When he did it again, it blocked. I assume the one that he did near the end of, like, when Azudaroth started talking about how he was getting faster and stronger, I would assume just based off the technique and the style that it's probably Hecatoncheires. So it's like, even if you count the 2 points sort of connected, like actually hit, it did some good damage. Obviously, when he blocked it, it didn't do it as much, but it still would put Sakaki within relative area of Azudaroth. And granted, Azudaroth was only at 3 minutes, but still. And it's like, Sakaki is rusty, so it's like, it makes me wonder if Sakaki was actually at his full capability, if he'd have been able to handle Azudaroth himself. I feel like yes. It's one of those things, like, we know Kiyoshi obviously is the main character, he has this crazy potential, but I still feel like characters like Sakaki right now would still be able to do pretty much the same thing. But I think it's one of those bits where it's like, he wants Kiyoshi to be able to do it, but also he sees Kiyoshi's ceiling. Because, like, if you're him, and you're like, clearly, this guy, like, I'm stronger than this kid. But at the same time, it's like, okay, Sakaki's 29, Kiyoshi's 16. And on top of that, he can clear, like, we don't know, like, the full in-depth of the power system, but I would assume, based off this chapter, that, like, if you are a high enough level, you can see and sense other people's percept power. So if he's, and he talks about it this chapter, so if he's looking at it directly, it only would make sense that he would also look at Kiyoshi's ceiling. Because if Kiyoshi is going to be growing exponentially, that's just going to mean that at that point, Sakaki's going to have less to worry about. There was a bit in the chapter, too, that was really intriguing, because he's talking about, like, his control over his percept power, and Kiyoshi still has bad control, but he mentions that, like, he's able to do 2 crest exorcisms at the same time. And we know from Senpai that was clearly a big deal, of being able to use 2. So that's, like, in itself a nod, but it shows, like, that tattoo on his throat. And I've always wondered if that was a 3rd crest, or maybe this is something that you have to have in order to use 2. Like, if you have 2 crests, you have to have something in there to kind of, like, stabilize him or something. I don't know, because it's clearly, when you look at the one on his throat, it's supposed to be like an eclipse. Because it makes sense, obviously, 1 arm sun, 1 arm moon, so if in the center you have an eclipse, just makes sense. And he's explaining to him, essentially, his power, like, his untapped capabilities and stuff are so high, but he's just not able to draw them out right. And he's talking about, like, a car and not being able to, you know, it's a car with a lot of horsepower and you can't drive it. I would imagine it's also like, you have, like, you know, here's an easy one. It's like, you have a phone and you have a charger that the plug works, but it's made for something that requires way more energy. So it's like, you could charge it, but you also put up the danger of, like, what if it messes with your battery? What if you fry your phone? It'd be one of those things where I imagine it's in itself your phone, even though it's made with the same type of materials. Like, this is the same cable that would charge it and stuff. And this cable is designed to literally charge equipment. It's just a different threshold and different energy kind of output, to where it's not able, like, the thing you're putting the energy into is not able to properly utilize it. So Kiyoshi, though he has this crazy untapped potential, because he doesn't have the full grasp on his capabilities and whatnot, it's almost like, I would assume, it's raw talent that would only come out in, like, times of real, like he's really pressed up against the wall, like, he has to kind of, like, force himself to get stronger, similar to what he did with the Azudaroth. But it's like, you can't count on that in every fight. It's just going to be too dangerous after a while. But we also get some stuff in the verse, which is really cool, of just explaining that one thing that's in it, and this has to do with experience, is that a big thing is that Kiyoshi hasn't been through enough, like, hell and strife and just absolute, like, hardships. And he's mentioning how with Concordia, they have this kind of like straight military style way of thinking. They said, you know, to live is to fight. What is it? Vivre. Oh God, I'm gonna try and pronounce it. Vivre militar est. I don't know. I will look that up at some point. I will make at some point, because here's the thing: if it's their motto, at some point the Concordia guys are going to say it in this arc. I need to get it memorized of how to how to pronounce it before then. But essentially, it's explaining how once you have a near-death experience and you kind of get towards that death's door and then return, it's kind of like what happens with Saiyans. It's like a core boost, because he mentions like the more near-death experience someone has, the brighter and the stronger their soul becomes. So I imagine that's like a core boost. It's just something that makes you stronger in general. And so he's going to just be pushing him in this last week of super training. And that's what they've been doing as this chapter closes. It's just constant, like they're putting in everything in terms of like eating and exercise, getting sleep, rest, training, just battle, and getting every single amount of progress they can as they go about getting ready into this next arc. And obviously Kiyoshi's still upset over the 97 people he wasn't able to save. And Sakaki understands that, because we see a bit where he has like a short little flashback just for a second to him and his younger self, where he was having a similar thing where he just wanted to protect people. He didn't have some crazy goal on a guy he's talking to where he's like, that's not really possible. And to a degree, you can never really, it's like if you want to save, you know, it's like you want to save everyone, you don't want to let anybody die. It's like, obviously that's what you should go for, but it's like you can never really get every single person saved. But if you can just constantly fight to get that number as close as possible to 0, that's ultimately the best you can do. But on top of that, it's like, that's when you're just going at one person. Like, as the series progresses, I would assume Kiyoshi's going to get more people kind of like riled up on his behalf. So we'll see more people being able to pick up that torch, and it not just being something that Kiyoshi and, you know, Sakaki and stuff has to be able to do. So right now, they're getting ready. We're getting all the characters all met up. They've just done their general training. And one thing that's really intriguing is that we had Kiyoshi and Sakaki set here for a few days while they were doing their own training. And they're going to group back up with everybody else. But this means that stuff like Nihon and Jack Joe have had these last couple days to just go off of whatever training they got from Tsurugi. So I'm really interested in seeing what exactly they've got going on. I'm still, my big hope when it comes to Nihon and Jack Joe's powers, I'm hoping it's like he does like a magic trick, and he like, Jack Joe almost collapses in his body, and it's just his tablecloth head, and we have Nihon just like, what's under here, puts it on his hand and then pulls something out. It's just cool stuff like that. I want it to be, maybe they do like their thing, instead of like a dice roll, they do like, oh, they do hide and seek, because they're, you know, they were, you know, they've known each other since they're little kids. So maybe it's like, instead it's like, what do I find? And he pulls out like some cool weapon or something like that from Jack Joe. I don't know. It's like, because they have such high potential from compatibility, but also Jack Joe as a former demon lord. So it's just stuff in there that can really do a lot for them as things progress. I'm really looking forward to this next arc, because this to me just, it feels so much like a straightforward, like we're going to their territory to go throw down kind of arc. Because they're, as I would assume, once they get everyone met back up, we're going to get set to go figure out where a cult hole is. They're going to go to the demon realm. Maybe they'll run into Shuten. But we're going to be seeing them go over into enemy territory and start to get ready to raise some dangers over there. And you know, look towards going and taking this guy down. Plus, there's going to be a lot of the regular demon lords for people to take. I know it's like, you know, you're going to get like the weak ones, where maybe those are going to be the ones that are like, oh, I'm ranked 11th out of 13th. You know, he talks crap to the humans, and then he's up against Tsurugi, and Tsurugi just is like, Blade Runner does like some cool move, and this guy's looking like he's been diced. But anyway, I thought this chapter was really good, because it was one of those ones where you reread it and it has like a really strong go over value, because of like some of just, again, the general lore stuff. Some of the cool stuff where it just kind of like goes into Kiyoshi and Sakaki's characters, showing the parallels between them, and then obviously getting set up for the future. And then obviously it's just an extra thing, seeing that cool weapon that Sakaki has. I feel like whenever you get a character that has like a specific, I have this many of this power, and then you're like, okay, we've got 2 out of the 5. Okay, is this chapter, how many are we gonna get in this arc? Like, are we going to get the other 4 weapons from Sakaki in this arc? Are we going to get it in another arc? Or what's going to be going on with that? Because right now, I mean, like, as far as we know, his Death Slayer blade is the strongest thing. But we know he's got other things. But we also know that, like, he's not going to show everything all at once. But we also know that there's a big open ceiling for, like, progress. Because we're seeing most of the activity we're going to be seeing in the series is going to be from people high up on the totem pole, because of obviously Kiyoshi's raw capabilities, Sakaki being a former cross paladin, Tsurugi being a cross paladin, and anybody that I would assume that we're going to be seeing in Big Shot adjacent that's like a Sakaki acquaintance is going to be a cross paladin. And we have that other girl. I forgot her name off the top of my head. I'm going to pull up the chapter really fast to see if I can figure out where it is, because I know they mentioned her, that there was going to be another cross paladin. I know we saw a picture of her, but I don't think that... I'm going to have to go back and look for it, because I really don't want to have to do it like at the end of the chapter. But we do know that it's the leader of the Sanguines, so she's going to be showing up soon, and they're going to be joining aid, and we're going to be getting some of the Sanguine people. But anyway, other than that, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about this series. Tell me your thoughts about this chapter. And there's lots of stuff right now going on in Jump that have been really hyped. And there's another one that's not in Jump, but I'm going to be looking at soon. Galaxias, which I'm pretty hyped about talk about. But anyway, other than that, talk to you guys later.